Do you have an idea?
I have an idea. I really thought about this. So, in the past, many years ago, and they did this for politics, they did this for all kinds of stuff. They used to drive around the neighborhoods and drive around town with speakers on the top of the car and announce what they wanted people to know. We should do that at the 4th of July parade or something around Oconomowoc and announce what Paragon does and how we can serve businesses.
This is such a random idea. I don't even know if I have any thoughts for this. All I can think of, though, is that TikTok we had recently where we talked about marketing trends to bring back. And I think you said door-to-door, like cold calling or sales, and people were very upset about that.
They really lit me up.
Only imagine how upset they'd be if you drove around by their house with just a message constantly blaring.
It would probably be worse than the people that said that I wanted to bring back door-to-door.
It probably would be.
I would probably get in a lot of trouble with that. People flying, throwing shit at you. No, we don't want to do that. All right, so that's a bad idea. But trends in analytics is something that we need to talk about today because it's what we've been hearing, it's what we've been talking about. So today, let's talk about that a little bit. Hey everyone, Skip Renke.
And Emma Opperman Vogt.
And welcome back to the Main Street Marketing Podcast.
A podcast where we discuss anything and everything marketing.
And today we're going to do something a little bit different. It's the halfway through the year, and so Emma and I are going to talk a little bit about, some of the things that have been going down and having a little sit down and just talk about what's been going on this part of the year. But we're really going to talk about trends.
Data.
And data. So let's just kind of jump right into that here.
Sweet. So, let's start with the basics here. So, what's the difference between trends and data?
Well, if you think about it, trends are what is happening in any particular time. So that could be, is it, you see like on social media, everybody's like doing like these certain challenges. That'd be considered like a trend. Or people advertising a lot on events for the summer. That's or a trend or something along those lines. Something that people are doing, and it's just everyone's doing it. Where data is what is captured from what you're doing inside of some of those trends. Is that's how I kind of look at it, or anything you're doing in general.
See, that's really funny. I think of it almost kind of opposite of what you said. I think I just love data. I'm more like the technical behind the scenes person. But to me, trends is patterns that you see in data. Like data comes first, and then to me, trends is what you see within the data.
It's kind of two different definitions.
I think there are two different, yes.
I guess how you're looking at it, because I always looked at that. I was, okay, I'm just thinking about that in a different light, but that's true.
I mean, it does mean what you said too, but That's funny. The first thing that comes to my mind is trends are patterns in data.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I never really thought about it that way, but yeah, you're right. So when we talk, well, let's talk about that. So we tell people all the time, know your data, because you can gain so much information about that. So where do small businesses go? Where are they supposed to look at all that stuff? And what should they make sure that they got?
That's the key, is you can only do with what you have. Right. So I think there's so many businesses that they don't even have the right tools installed to track the data. So, I mean, truly, it depends what your goals are, but I think the basics are like your website's the front window to your business. Like we always say, you have to have data on your website, whether that's Google Analytics, that's a platform built right into your website. You have to be able to analyze how long people are on your website, what they're doing, how many people there are. So that's always a good place to start, no matter what platform you're using, your website data. Yeah,
that doesn't, no matter, absolutely.
Right? Then you have, a Google Search Console where you can see what people are searching to get to your website or to show up in search results. You have your social media analytics. I mean, the list goes on and on.
And and when you're getting at some of those platforms, you can really dive down the rabbit hole. I mean, there's tons of things that you can actually look at. You can spend a lot of time in any analytics.
But I think two mistakes. The biggest mistake people have is never installing the tools to have their data. And then obviously the second biggest mistake is they install it and they never once look at it.
How many times have we started working with somebody and they didn't even know what Google Analytics was?
Right. I always find it interesting when we meet with people and they're like, I need a new website, and I don't want this page or this page because nobody looks at that. Okay, how do you know no one looks at that? And they're like, well, I just know that. Like, there is no data behind that to back it up. Just because nobody has told them that they're looking at it, they assume that nobody's looked at it.
That's a really good point.
Could be true, but let's use the actual physical data to make those decisions.
And we've found on many, many occasions that people say, oh, nobody looks at that page. Well, it's actually your 6th or 7th top viewed page.
Right.
It's like, oh, I didn't know that. So that's why, yeah, you're right. It's important.
So now that we're diving deeper into this, what are some of those metrics that are really important to look at?
Well, if you're speaking specifically, let's say just about website, how many visitors are you getting, like in any set period of time? So whether that's 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, whatever you set, I think that's huge. And how many visitors you're getting, and then kind of breaking, in my mind's eye, what I look at is how many are new and how many are returning. Because I always want to, as selfish, but as a business owner, I want to see that I'm getting new people with eyes on the business as much as I can. But then and people are coming back, what are they looking at? What are they doing? And what are they interested in? So, pulling that data. That's really important to me. The other thing I think is the time spent on the site. When people are coming, are they there for a specific amount of time? Are they there for a minute? Are they there for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 seconds, 8 seconds, whatever that is? And now that number is going to move, obviously, depending on what you're doing. I mean, because sometimes you're running ads, someone's going to get there, see it, they're going to leave. But if someone comes like through a newsletter, they click on a blog, they're there for 3 minutes. It's all very. But I look at that, and then I look at one thing I kind of dive into a little bit more than maybe more than other people is I watch the journey of people.
That's really important,
and that fascinates me. I mean, but that's where I can really dive down that rabbit hole. Like I'll say, somebody comes in on the website, then where are they going in? There's charts and graphs where people break out and how they go. And where they're flowing through. I always watch that.
I always find one of the more interesting pieces of data is the device they're on. There are always surprises that there are businesses that you think everyone's on their phone these days. That's where they're going to be. And then some of these sites I look at and it's like, well, actually 50% of their users are still desktop, and sometimes even more than that.
Yeah.
No, it totally depends on the industry and their audience. But that, at least for me and what I do in website design, like that is so critical to know what device people are on and how your website is working on those devices.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And then when I dive down even probably something a little bit deeper is I might look at the queries and which is really super important when you're talking about analytics is like what are some of the queries and how people found you, looking at the Google Search Console for instance and saying okay, well then how did they get there? What did they search in? Are you using that term? That's one thing. But when you talk about some of the data, then that's just website.
Right.
Like I mean,
ads, Google ads,
right.
Social media. I mean, you have your impressions, your reach, your clicks.
Video. How long when someone's watching it, how long do they stay on the video? And then, depending on where it's running, I mean, if you're running it just on a social, in YouTube, they have to stay there for a certain amount of time, but how long are they staying on the video after where they can skip the ad or they can skip that and direct their viewing content? How long do they stay then?
Right.
Which I think that's really important.
Well, and I think like it is so easy to get lost in all of these numbers, but really you got to bring it back. What are your goals? If your goal is brand awareness, right, that impressions, the reach, like those probably are going to be more valuable pieces of data. Like you have to know your goals to know which numbers are more important than the others.
And, when you look at some of those numbers, we were talking about like one time when we were looking at some numbers for us and we just saw like a big spike on like one or any given day or a week. So that kind of, okay, so then when you talk about data, how do you tell the difference between a fluke and a trend then?
I think like you just said, you have to look at a longer date range, right? If you're just looking in the last week and you're like, oh, 2 of these days, my website had 5,000 views on these 2 days. Okay, well, let's look at the bigger picture. Like a trend is more consistent. Where I always think, I think it was a few months ago, we had a website that someone was attempting to hack into, right? So there were 2 days that those views on the website were significantly higher, but then you can't just look at that one data set. So then we looked where they were coming from. They're coming from another country that business doesn't serve in, so that's a fluke, right? That's not a trend.
Right.
So sometimes you have to use multiple data points to determine fluke or trend, but the biggest thing is you got to look full picture.
And even when you look at some of that, I mean, we've looked at it our own where I say, oh, that's a fluke. There's a big spike here, and then here's a big spike here. It's like, well, wait a minute. This is the days when we launched ABC video, or this is the day that we launched this, or we did something here, which caused that as a trend. So now we're looking at it and saying, okay, every single time we do A, B, or C, 1, 2, 3 happens.
Yes.
And then there's some predictability within reason on the bell-shaped curve. I mean, there's some predictability, but you can kind of see and maybe create your own trends, based upon what happens.
So on that note, so let's say a post, maybe it doesn't go viral, but in terms of a business, what their normal average is, it does significantly better. How do you turn that from viral or one-time fluke into a strategy?
Well, in my mind's eye, I mean, diving into some of that data from what was happening with it at that point in time, for instance, who was it reaching? Is it reaching, let's say it was 60% of it, or 70% was women and 30% was men. Now, obviously the message resonated more with women than it did with men. What are the age ranges? Where did they see it? How long, so it's taking all that data and saying, okay, maybe they saw a lot of it on Instagram, or they saw it on TikTok. It was 70% was women in the ages between of 25 and 35. Well, then maybe running campaigns specifically focused towards those people in that age bracket on that platform in that demographic, or even taking the geographic indication. Where were they clicking? Was it one segment of an area, of a community, of a pocket, a city, a zip code, whatever? And then micro marketing to those people to gain more followers, maybe more shares, more likes, more clicks, more sales is ultimately what you want it to convert to. But I think it's really looking at the data and then using it to your advantage to reach the initial post, and then kind of driving back and try to reach that audience again.
Sense. I think about, like, for us when we've been looking at our data, and I mean, going back a few years since we've been doing our podcast, and we post those on social, and we see that our videos that have of our podcast that have a guest that's a really good storyteller, those do significantly better than other podcasts, and that has influenced some of what we talk about and who we bring onto our podcast. Like that right there, when we took that one-time piece of data that did really well, and we built a strategy off of that. Yeah, right.
And and you can really, I mean, there's a lot of different industries and a lot of different businesses that can use that. I mean, I know I don't want to, say this, but I mean, let's think about some of the roofers, right? When a storm comes through, everyone's biting for that same business in that one neighborhood, town, city, whatever that is. But you micro market to that, and you can, if they run something there, they run a video, how are they going to get in front of these people? Because you got 20 people biting for the same, all that business, but you create that strategy based on what you're doing in that area, and just creating a strategy based upon what's happening with a video that you're running or whatever you're doing. So yeah, for sure. But so when I look at what is a sign then so we talk about analytics, and we talk about the spikes, we talk about the trends and everything. So what, in your opinion, in the analytics, what is a sign that it's time to pivot what you're doing?
I think it depends what piece of data you're looking at, but let's take social, for example. You're looking at your data from Facebook, Instagram. If your engagement is dropping off, like, I think it's a clear sign that people aren't resonating with your message anymore. So maybe that's changing the message, or maybe it's the fact that truly your followers aren't the right people. So maybe it's time to build a campaign around gaining new followers that are best for your business. But I think the biggest thing is low engagement, or keeping an eye on your competitors and how their campaigns are performing, and if theirs are in an upward trend and yours is a downward trend, like that's a clear sign that something needs to change. And then you can use that data to determine, okay, what needs to change. When were we performing well? What were we doing at that time? Maybe what was the environment during that date range? I mean, there's so many different factors that go into it. But I think that's the biggest thing. Even when you think about websites, if the first 6 months of the year, you had great reach on your website, lots of visitors, and that's dipping down, is that the fact that you're no longer marketing? Is that the fact that the climate has changed? Or truly is your website not doing its purpose for your audience anymore?
And that also plays in what changed in the world of the algorithms.
Right.
Is there something off with your SEO? Is there something off with your local rankings that making your site not have a decent, it's not trustworthy anymore. So now the confidence from Google is that you're not ranking high enough because something's going on. That's another big thing that plays into it, because that can change at a moment's notice. That we see that all the time, where pages will drop from page 1 to page 2, or whatnot. In different queries, different ways of looking at things. So yeah, I mean, you have to really. It's a lot of information that that you have to look at.
So knowing that and how overwhelming this is, what are some tools and things that people can use to kind of bring back the focus and make this as less overwhelming as it possibly can be?
Well, we have our portals that we use. We have a data analytics portal that we offer to, for people that can, if they want to just simply have their data, they can look at it, or, clients, we have it for clients too, as well as ourselves. But I think it's getting it all in one spot. For the and business owners still do it. They'll log into their LinkedIn, they'll log into their Facebook, they'll log into their Instagram, they'll log into their YouTube, they'll log into their Google Ads, and they have to log into all these different places, Google Search Console, and try to disseminate out from all these different places. So they got 6, 7, 8, 10 tabs open.
Time for some more monitors. We need 10 screens to figure out the data and look at it all at once.
Or you can become a slave to the tab, to the open tabs. And then if you're switching back and forth between all that, what does it truly mean? What is this? How does that all tie together? Where is this? And what did I see over here? It can actually be more time consuming analyzing some data with all the platforms have their stuff. And if you're looking at one platform, that's fine. But if you want to get a snapshot of your data, you have to get it all in one spot and pick what's important. And I say that because there's so many different things you can pick from data points and put it into a report that some of it's just not useful. I shouldn't say it's not useful, but it may not be truly what you need to look at.
I think the nice thing about having those platforms where all your data is in one, and like you said, you're shoring that up a little bit. You're looking at the important data points. That's where you see those trends and those flukes, and then from there where you need to dive deeper. So maybe from there, that's making your decision, okay, I need to look at Google Analytics, and I really need to look at this specific piece, because I was able to quickly identify that in one platform looking at the big picture.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and now let's think about this one step further. Now what's here?
Right.
AI. So how is that changing how you analyze and how you respond?
Right.
Are you using it yet?
Well, that's one thing that we definitely need to dive deeper into.
That's a whole nother day.
I think the nice thing about that is it's way easier now to know when are times that it's better to make a post on social media, because the algorithm and the AI suggestions know when your specific audience is on that platform. Not like when it used to be and there were the studies that, okay, you should post on Tuesday and Thursday between this time and this time. No, like the data now is specifically for your audience, when you should be posting, on which platforms, predictions on how well posts could do, and then they compare it to each other, right? When you post this type of content, it's 2 times more successful than this type of content. I think right now it's such a tool to identify those trends versus having to go one by one, right?
Yeah.
And try to figure it out yourself. But I mean that there's so much that it can do, and that's something that we got to dive more into.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was reading an article this morning, which I shared with you. I don't know if you had a chance to read it yet, or maybe I don't think you could, but it was how developers are going to have to change their way of how they structure content in order for the search engines, because people are using ChatGPT for search engines, So now you have to change how you do things so you are relevant and you rank in order to be found. Which is kind of interesting, and it's a lot. There's still lots that's going to happen, 5, 10, 15 years, but you got to start thinking about that. Probably a little bit more, probably sooner than later. Than just waiting until the last second. You really got to stay up on it in order for the AI concept of it. So.
Right. Now, has there ever been a moment where there's been a piece of data that has completely shifted the direction of your strategy?
2016. When Paragon was rebranded from Paragon Media Group to Paragon Marketing Group, because over that course of time we were adding more and more services, but we just stayed as a quote unquote media company, and that's when you started. And when we rebranded to Paragon Marketing Group, the data after we launched the site, and what people were finding us for and searching and how we were ranking and what we were being contacted for, changed how we did our marketing from March or April of that year through the rest of 2017. Because in November, so by the time it was it was March or April, we were being found a lot more for social media management, website design, and we had the it was social media, website design, video production was really the top three. And so we shifted, instead of just focusing on general marketing, we focused on those three aspects. And then grew that side of the business, and then we found, now we've got Google Ads, and then we added that, and we built off that data. But that was really I can remember that vividly, because I'm like, wow, look at this data. We really got to make a change.
Right.
And it was all in, and then here we are.
I think way smaller scale than that. Obviously, that's something that completely changed and shaped the direction of the business.
Right.
But I always think of when we used to do our video series on social media, our 30-second thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
Those did so well for such a long time. People loved that education. But in that time frame, the world of video drastically changed. And after years of doing that, the data was showing that people weren't really watching those anymore. They weren't engaging. Like when we started doing that, nobody else, not that no one else was doing it, but in our local market, there weren't a lot of people doing that.
No.
And so we had to shift strategy of like, we still need to do video, but how else can we educate? And I think that's about when we started podcasting.
Yeah, we had another idea we were trying. I don't remember what that was. I can't remember the name of it.
Talk of the Town?
Yes, Talk of the Town. That was really that was a glorified 30-second thoughts just on steroids. But that didn't resonate. We didn't get that. And so then the podcasting was, talking about concepts and just being open and honest and having guests that bring in their expertise, and that's really resonated back up. So yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about 30-second thoughts. I totally forgot about that. And those, but we still have people watch them, and people still do see them. I shouldn't say that, but not to the extent they did when we promoted them. But all right, so now that's one way of how you pivoted to take advantage of the data. Talk about a misstep.
Oh man. I'm sure there's lots of examples. I can't think of specific examples, but I think the biggest misstep, kind of like we talked about earlier, is making the decisions based on what you assume the data is and investing the money. That's the biggest thing, is when you're assuming and you're investing the money, you're going to have to reinvest. So using that data to invest properly. Like you see people all the time of, TikTok's, it's so popular, I'm going to throw all my advertising budget into TikTok. Well, was there data to support that was working for your business before you invested all that money? Or did you need to test the waters a little bit to see if your business resonated, what content resonated there before you go all in? I think people jump from trend to trend without using the data.
Yeah.
And then they waste so much money.
Yes, they do. Partly because Yeah, you're right. There's no other way to put it. They just waste a lot of money. I mean, there's, you think about it, but that's really in the bottom line. Man, maybe because they don't know, they're not doing it right. They don't know how to do it. They're doing it properly too. There's that aspect of it. But yeah, that's a really good point.
So we've covered a lot, and we've already mentioned this is overwhelming. But if someone was going to take action this week, what is one small step in the right direction they can take?
You said it in your sentence. Take action. I mean, I would say that out of, we have 147 clients, I would say out of all of that, I would more than 80% of the people when they first came to us didn't really look at data. And maybe they don't look at it enough now too, But I mean, I think if you're listening to this and you're not looking at your data, take a step and start looking at it. Don't look at it all. Start with one aspect of it, and I would say if you're going to start with anything, look at the data in your website. That's where you talked about it being the front window to your business. That should be the place you start, and then start adding on little bits and pieces as you go. Don't try to eat the elephant in one bite, because you're going to go insane. It will become overwhelming. It will discourage you. It will frustrate you. And when the day is done, then you're not going to want to do it anymore, and you're not going to get the valuable information
Right.
that you
Yeah.
need.
Baby steps to get to the point where you're using data to drive all your decisions.
And that's an ongoing thing. I mean, I look at data as a big ball of Play-Doh. You're constantly molding it, shaping it, adding it, doing what you want to do to make it the way you want to. And then by the time, just when you think you got it right, you got to change it again.
There's not some magic sauce, and just because you use data, everything's going to be perfect. But you're going to have a way better chance of success.
Oh yeah.
When that's driving your decisions.
It will increase what you just said. Basically, it's going to increase your chance of success more than what it was. But if you don't do it, if you're not looking at it, it can hinder you and really hurt you. So thinking this is the first half of the year. So now you have a crystal ball. I'm kidding you. No. So now we're looking at the second half of the year. What are you looking at from a trend wise? What are you focusing on?
I think the easy answer, and everyone's saying it, is where AI is going. I mean, we all know that, right? That's something we all have to watch out for. But digging a little bit deeper, what I'm curious to see the direction it goes. I think especially when you, like, from a user standpoint and user experience, you hear so many people right now making their purchases off of social media. That social commerce aspect, whether it's TikTok Shop or they're seeing the shop ads on Facebook or Instagram. There are so many people that is where they are making their impulsive decisions.
Yeah.
So I will be curious the direction if that continues and how businesses adapt to that. Because once everybody hops on board and starts doing that, how are you different than anyone else? Will that still drive decisions, or do you have to, like you kind of mentioned earlier, micro target people? The other thing that I just find so interesting is the algorithms, right? The keywords that you're putting in your captions, in your hashtags, and how that's influencing, the For You feeds that's showing up on, and the different places people are seeing that, and what those keywords are that are increasing the views on your content.
And, moving along to taking that one step further, looking at the voice searches with those phrases, the things, and how that AI and how the, the Alexas are in their series of the world, how those voice searches are utilized or being used in order for your business to show up. I've been watching that more and more. And it's kind of fascinating to me, because when you look through that, you see how people are searching. It's pretty interesting. So yeah, that's and AI. I mean, I'm going to keep my eye on that, and really working with business owners to help them do it right if they're going to use it. I mean, how many times we've seen people that are using AI and they take it exactly for what comes out of that thing.
Right. And it's no longer an if they're going to use it. It's a when and how they're using it. It is. If you're not using it in some capacity, you're setting yourself behind.
Yeah. And my self little geek thing I'm looking at, I'm going to watch, is the video trends from AI. It's fascinating to me how fast that's changing. I know Nate and I have had conversations about it. That's changing so rapidly. And there's some things that you look at, you're like, wow. I mean, that's that's pretty good. But there's something in there. You're like, yeah, that's not real. So how that's all how that's gonna come through to fruition. I'm gonna watch that.
Yeah. Well, we covered a lot, and that we could have dove real
we
deep. We could talk for hours.
We could sit here for hours
We just scratched the surface here, but I think it was important that halfway through the year, right, we kind of revisited this to make sure that as you're making decisions, you're thinking about your data. But I'm glad we don't have a guest, because I've really been wanting to hear your answers to our rapid fire questions. So now we're gonna put you in the hot seat.
Great, wonderful.
And it's time for you to answer some questions.
Nice.
So what is the worst advice you've ever gotten?
The worst advice I've ever got was years ago from a business owner that I worked with. Not necessarily in the marketing world, when I was in another profession, but it was about marketing. And he had said, once you find something that works, stick with it and don't change. I thought that was the worst piece of advice that anybody could ever give. Maybe at that point in time, that might have been the way to go. But if you were to stick with that now, you'd be in a heap load of trouble. And so that was the worst. I'm like, well, what if it stops working? Stay with it. It'll keep working. I'm like, no, it won't. I mean,
always have to adapt.
I said, times change. You got to adapt and overcome. So yeah, that was the worst piece of advice I ever got from somebody.
What's a common myth about marketing?
It's fast. That you get fast results. Marketing is not a 2-month game. It's not a 3-month game. It's a marathon. It is not a sprint. And people that look for instantaneous results get instantaneous frustration. And you can't expect immediate returns. It just doesn't work. It's not a fast game.
Now, not that we like to pick favorites with our clients, but do you have a favorite industry that you like to work with?
A favorite industry that I like to work with. I'm not going to say an industry, more of a segment. I love working with everybody we work with.
Oh, okay.
But one thing that I really love working with startups. And as Emma can attest to things, I am a serial entrepreneur. I have come up with some crazy ideas that have been shot down. And I've skipped Salad Shack. No, I'm just kidding you. But it's not really. I do think it's a good idea, but I digress. That's a whole nother day. But working with startups, I think, is something that I really gravitate towards, because being an entrepreneur since I was 14 years old, I've always had my eye on that ball, and that's always been what I've done. So making sure that a small business owner who's starting up is doing it right, and not making the mistakes that I made, and continually make. I mean, we're not perfect. There's only one that is, but it's having them mitigate against making the mistakes that cost them a tons of money. I really gravitate towards startups for sure. What's
something new you've learned recently?
What I've learned recently is that I can't. AI freaked me out when I heard about it. And diving into it more and learning more about it and understanding it more, that you're going to have to adapt and overcome things inside of it, and how it's going to help businesses become more efficient, become more effective, to help them grow. I mean, I've learned that I can't be afraid of it, and that there's going to be a lot of good that's going to come out of it, if it's used properly. And I think that's what I've really learned recently.
Tell me an unpopular opinion or a hill you're willing to die on.
That you should avoid making mistakes. I think there's people that say you should mitigate, like you can't make mistakes in business, and you don't want to, you don't like them. But you can't get better without making mistakes. And if you're not making mistakes, then you're not trying new things. And if you're not trying new things, you can't just keep in one gear sometimes. You have to change gears. And people that don't change or that don't try new things and make mistakes don't learn and don't get themselves better. So I don't like making them, but I don't like not trying things. And if I make them, well, I learn from them. We get better. We do it all the time, and that's part of who we are. I encourage mistakes, just not a lot of them. How about that?
What is something you've read, seen, or listened to recently that you'd recommend?
One of the things that this is my year to read the entire Bible. And I've really dove into Ecclesiastes a lot this year, to where it talks about the work that God gives you to do, and enjoy your toil. And yet, when you enjoy your toil, it's not all for vanity, and that as part of that, as part of enjoying your toil, you should also enjoy it and realize that it's all going to come in God's time, and it's not going to. You can't always necessarily force what you want to have happen, and sometimes you can do whatever you want to in the world to make anything happen the way you want, but it's not going to do it unless you just let it be done on God's time. Just do the best you can with what you got.
I like that. Not the direction I thought you were going to go into. You're a very well-rounded person. I don't even know if I can say the title of the book. I'm just thinking about the book that you want all your employees to read, The Subtle...
Oh, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck?
Yeah. That is really what I thought you were going to say, but I'm glad you're well-rounded in your
That is my go-to book once a year. But that's not number 2, but it is a good book to read.
All right. No, I know we kind of covered this a little bit already, but if there's one thing you want people to take away today, what is it?
Use your data to your advantage, man. I mean, it's there for you to absorb, to analyze, and to make you better. And even if it's like 3 sections of just something, use something from your data and then try something. And if it makes, again, back to the making mistakes, you could make a mistake with it. But what if it hit? What if maybe you ran an ad that you're running a general ad? Maybe you saw that men were looking at your business more than women. Make an ad or do something that's maybe towards men more for one specific area of your business. And if it resonates and it works, well, then you've just proven to yourself that the data can really help you. So I think people just have to use their data and not be afraid of it.
Knowing when to bring in the experts, right? Like we say this like it's all easy, but we live and breathe this every day, and it's our passion, right? So if that's not your thing, that's fine. But then consult with somebody that it is their thing and they know what to do with that data.
Right. And, the other thing is when you talk about bringing in the experts, I mean, we're not just here trying to push a product or anything, but if there's so many tools out there that you can use that are helpful, but some of those are really hard to set up. And then there's others that are really easy to set up, but they don't give you all the data you want. We've talked with tons of people and we've analyzed products that we think people should be using, or they can use ours. But I'm one of these people, you can use ours or you can use somebody else's. I really don't care. Just use it. Because I'd rather have somebody have access to it than not be looking at it at all.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, thanks for tuning in today and watching the Main Street Marketing Podcast hosted by
Skip Ranke
and Emma Opperman Vogt.
And you can check us out on all of the podcast areas, Spotify, Apple. You can get it all there.
All right, and you can find our full videos on YouTube.
All right, thanks for stopping by today. See ya.